Welcome to Vince by Submission. I'm your host, Vince, and I'm here to talk about my pick for the submission of the night that occurred at UFC 330, which was headlined by Islam Makhachev defending his welterweight title against Ian Machado Gary. But we're not here to talk about that fight. We're here to talk about my pick for the best submission of the night, and that occurred on the prelims in the match where Charles Johnson took on Eduardo Chapolin. And I'll be honest with you, this fight kind of pissed me off. There were a whole lot of fouls that happened in this fight, some of them which were not checked by the referee. It was really getting frustrating seeing this fight, but seeing the guy who was getting fouled come back and get the win. And not only did he get the win, but he got it with a stoppage using a very rare submission in MMA. It was just very satisfying to see. You know, I came up in the 80s and the 90s. Yes, I'm that old. And I think back to all of the martial arts movies and the combat sports movies that I've seen throughout the years. And a lot of times you'll have your hero of the story taking on a very difficult opponent. And it's a pretty tough fight already just because of how tough the antagonist is. And then you'll see our hero start to get the upper hand. He starts to get the better of the antagonist of the movie. And then so the bad guy, being the bad guy that he is, knows he's about to lose his fight, so he has to find a way to win. So he employs some dirty technique, some underhanded tactic to get over on our hero. I think of times like in Bloodsport when the guy crumples up the pill and throws it in Jean-Claude Van Damme's eyes, Frank Dukes' eyes. And then I think of like Karate Kid when the sensei was like, sweep the leg, do the illegal move to the leg to hurt his leg so he can't fight, stuff like that. And then we see our hero still come out victorious, and it makes it that much more satisfying. And we actually got to see this happen at UFC 330 in this fight. Granted, it wasn't some big main event title fight like those other movies that I just mentioned, but nonetheless, we got to see a fight where Chapolin landed multiple fouls, some of which were not checked by the referee. And I have problems with the referee in this, and I'll get to this in a minute. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But Charles Johnson didn't let that stop him. He was able to come back. He was able to fight hard and then pull off a super rare submission. And that is why it is my pick for the submission of the night. So let's go ahead and break all of that down right now. So in the first round, Chapolin lands an eye poke, as you can see right here. And apologies, the image quality isn't the best because I had to take screenshots from the Paramount site and it doesn't really have the best, resolution. Unfortunately, I did the best I could. But as you can see right here, you got Chapolin reaching out and poking Charles Johnson right in the eye. Here's another angle. You can see right here. Finger goes right into the right eye. So when this happens, and we've seen this before whenever an eye poke happens, like someone gets poked in the eye and they kind of reel back like, hey, I got poked in the eye. The ref will see, the one guy reaching for his eye, and he'll see that maybe a foul has been committed and he should step in and, make sure everything's clear, see if he needs a break or, whatever, go through the standard procedures. Also, a lot of times we'll see something where there is some type of unintentional foul, be it an eye poke or a low blow. Sometimes these things do happen by accident. The opponent will see, oh, he just reacted like a low blow or an eye poke. Let me pause for a minute, let him, make sure he's all right. That's good sportsmanship. Is that what happened here on either of those parts when it comes to the referee or Chapolin taking action after Charles Johnson gets poked in the eye and reacted? He reels back and he holds his eye and he's kind of waving like, hey, hold on, I got poked in the eye. Did the referee step in and take any kind of action? Did Chapolin decide he wanted to go ahead and, hey, I did something by accident, let's go ahead and pause here for a minute? No, that's not what happened. Chapolin used this situation to completely swarm him. While Johnson is reeling in pain and holding his eye, and he was like saying, hey, I've been eye poked. He's pointing at his eye, and there was no pause. Chapolin was like, I'm going to swarm all over this guy and not let him have a chance to recover. I'm going to take advantage of this foul, and I think that's kind of dirty. I understand the concept to protect yourself at all times, but if you commit a foul on somebody, you committed a foul on somebody, and you try to take advantage of the situation, that makes you a dirty fighter. And you're not going to change my mind on this. Chapolin is a dirty fighter, and we're going to see a few more examples of how he's a dirty fighter and a few more shots that I have coming up. So eventually, Charles Johnson in this little scramble where he's getting swarmed and he's just trying to push away and get away and try to get the referee's attention saying, hey, I got poked in the eye. He looks over at the referee, Jason Herzog. Side note, Jason Herzog has a lot of controversy surrounding his name lately when it comes to supposed fight fixing betting scandal type stuff. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but let's just say that his name's been brought up multiple times recently in some shady manners, and some people have been questioning how legitimate he is of a referee. Is he very incompetent, or is he shady and corrupt? So I'm leaning towards corrupt, because you see right here, when Charles Johnson finally separates and he looks at the referee, Jason Herzog, saying, hey, I was poked in the eye, can I get some type of stoppage? Jason Herzog, if you go back and watch the video yourself, I can only get still shots so I don't get copyrighted. He's looking, you see, they're looking right at each other right here. I'm pointing at my screen as if you could see it. They're looking at each other and he's showing, hey, I was poked in the eye. And Jason Herzog puts his hand up like acknowledging, hey, I see that you're claiming you got poked in the eye, but I'm not going to stop the action. We've seen this happen before where a person will either pretend they got poked in the eye, or maybe they thought they got poked in the eye, but it was actually a legal strike. Sometimes a punch might just, like the knuckles will kind of catch and graze the eye and it feels like an eye poke. And so like, hey, I was poked in the eye. And the referee's not actually sure if it was an eye poke. So what they do, and actually if you watch this last episode of The Ultimate Fighter, this very thing happened. There was supposedly an eye poke. The one person was like, hey, I was poked in the eye. Can we get a stop to the action? And the referee stopped it and says, hey, let's look at the replay. He looked at the replay and realized that it wasn't an eye poke. It was just a normal legal shot to the eye that was so hard that it felt like an eye poke. So he's like, nope, not an eye poke. Continue. The timeout's over. That is proper. That is normal. That is acceptable. But referee Jason Herzog didn't even want to do that. He acknowledges that he is complaining about an eye poke, but he is not addressing it. He doesn't even give him the opportunity of a replay or anything like that. And when they go back, the commentary team actually does their own replay of their own. You could actually see, this is from that replay, you could see plain as day that it was in fact an eye poke, but Charles Johnson was not given that benefit of reviewing that. He was not given that opportunity to have it reviewed on the replay. So he just had to eat it and he got swarmed. Jason Herzog right here doesn't care. And so unfortunately the fight has to continue where Charles Johnson is compromised. So not long after this little segment, as you can see, we have just over a minute remaining in the first round. Just as we're starting to get close to the end of the first round, this guy, Chapelin, he's just not content getting one foul. He needs another foul. So whenever he gets Charles Johnson in a bad position where he ends up getting him down to the ground, Charles Johnson kind of like rolls to get into a turtle position to try to, get some defense and get back up. And when he's in turtle, Chapelin decides to knee him right in the head. Very blatant illegal knee. Right in front of the referee. And at this point, Jason Herzog has no choice. As dirty of a referee as I think he is, and I will die on this hill, he is a dirty referee. This is too blatant, and I think it would just be too controversial if he doesn't do anything about it. So he goes ahead and steps in, he separates them, and he does take away a point from Chapelin. This is the first round, so Chapelin was winning this round. So it's going to be a 9-9 round at the end of the day. It goes on to the second round. I'm going to go ahead and spare a big, long breakdown the second round. Long story short, Chapelin clearly won the second round. So now we go into the third round, and that would mean Chapelin is up by 1 point. It would be up by 2 points if not for the point deduction, but we end up only having a 1 point separation because of the point deduction. Now, here's another sequence that happens that is technically not something I would call dirty. Let me go ahead and move my little image right here so we could see a little bit better, see more of the action for these screenshots. This is not technically illegal. It's one of those moves that's like borderline dirty, kind of, sort of. It's deceptive if nothing else. It's not really illegal. It's a little bit cheap. And if this happened like one time by a fighter, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I guess that's the game. It is what it is. But the fact that he landed an eye poke, which I'm wondering if was intentional. He didn't pause for the action, decide to swarm on him after getting an eye poke. After realizing he fouled his opponent, he didn't give him the benefit of, getting a breather from it, and then gets an illegal knee. That's That's basically 3 strikes in the first round alone. So it wouldn't really surprise me if this is just par for the course, that this is just him fighting in a very deceptive way, because that's the type of fighter he is. He gets kicked here in the gut. It doesn't look like it's that hard, but he gets kicked and he reels like it hurt really, really, really bad. So then Charles Johnson sees this and says, all right, well, maybe this is an opportunity that I could come in to try to go ahead and finish him off. And nope, he was just playing possum, and he swings back really hard. It was deceptive. This is one where it's not illegal. It's borderline dirty, maybe. It's something that I normally wouldn't hold against a fighter, but after the history of what happened in the first round, this is just more of that kind of playing dirty stuff that's going on from Chapolin. And, I'm not really too happy seeing it, but it is what it is. But it did eventually lead to the finishing sequence, which we're going to get into now. So whenever he strikes back at Johnson, Johnson has to kind of backpedal and reset himself because he wasn't expecting that strike. Chapolin decides he wants to go ahead and shoot in for a single leg. Charles Johnson fortunately sees it coming. He ends up sprawling on top of him. He gets in a front headlock position. It looks like he's trying to set up something, maybe a Darce or something along those lines. And he realizes he can't quite get it because Chapolin's, covering up too much. So he decides to go ahead and spin around and take the back, which is, a smart thing to do. I do this a lot whenever I'm in jiu-jitsu, someone shoots on me and I try to set up some type of front headlock, be it a guillotine, anaconda, dar, something like that. And I realize I don't have it because they're just tucked in too much. I'll just spin around and take the back. It's a lot easier. So that's what he does. He spins around, takes it back. He works a little bit of ground and pound. And then eventually Chapolin decides he wants to go ahead and try to stand back up. And when he does, Charles Johnson climbs up his body and he gets a body lock, he gets his hooks in. And he's again trying to work some punches, trying to work some type of choke. And eventually Chapolin goes back down to the ground. Or actually, no, let me correct myself. Charles Johnson in this position on his back while they're standing is trying to, secure something. And he starts to lose balance and he starts to fall around to the front side of Chapolin. And then that's when Chapolin decides, okay, let's go ahead and take that back down to the ground, because at that point he will be on top of Johnson. Johnson will just have Chapolin in his guard. So they come down here and it's not like a front facing guard. It's kind of like to the side, as you can see, but Johnson ends up getting like a pretty deep body lock here. And Chapolin continues to turn into him. And whenever he turns into him, he puts his arm over. And shortly after this, he taps out. Now, in the moment, because I was watching this live, in the moment, I was a little bit confused because I'm like, wait, because at that angle, I would think guillotine, but I saw his arm wasn't hooked under the neck for it to be an actual guillotine. So when he tapped, I was really confused. I was like, wait, what happened there? What was the submission? I totally missed it. And then heard the commentary team say that it was a twister. And then one of them elaborated further that it was a Scottish twister. Now, for those of you that don't really pay attention too much to the submission game, don't train jiu-jitsu, if you don't know what a twister is, twisters are very weird submissions that you could get from multiple angles. I've seen it done from a lot of different weird angles. If you could do something where basically you're twisting, hence the name, the lower half of the body and the upper half of the body, like the torso and the hips, turn them in different directions in some type of way. You have someone like where you're on their back and you kind of like get like a weird underhook on their arm and you kind of like pull and it kind of twists their body, like their torso and hips in different directions. It torques on the spine. It's a spinal lock and it could be pretty painful. This variation is where you're doing it from the front and basically you're just driving their body off to the side like this. And you can see better from this angle. You see that, he's not in line the way he would like to be right here. He's just driving, Charles Johnson, that is driving down with his arm and his shoulder and his ribs, just pushing his head and neck in this direction while using this body lock to hold his hips in place, and gets the tap. It is called a Scottish twister. It was a beautiful finish after a frustrating fight, full of fouls, full of dirty fighting. He not only overcame a dirty opponent, he not only overcame a dirty referee, or at best case scenario, an incompetent referee, and still gets the win. And I love this. After he taps, Charles Johnson sits up and he just kind of like pushes him off like by the neck, just kind of like, get off me. You got to watch the video of it. If I try to do the video of it, I'd probably get copyrighted, but like he just comes up and just like shoves him off. And it was just really fun to see. So you can see here, there's a couple more angles as he's getting the submission here. You see how the spine is just torqued. You know, this don't feel good. And this face right here, this face of victory, I love to see it. And right there, he gets the tap. So that is my pick for the submission of the night. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in later this week because I'll be doing another video where I do my predictions on this coming UFC fight night this weekend, being headlined by Anthony Hernandez taking on Gregory Rodriguez. Fluffy versus RoboCop. That fight is going to be an absolute banger, and I cannot wait to see it. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.